Greetings, fellow sinners. The Reprieve here with you once again. This is kind of odd because this is the second video in a row where I'm responding to somebody making a video responding to a comment I left on another video, not even one of theirs. The last one being Godless Haze, this one being the famous Nelliediddle. Now, Nellie's made a few videos to me in the past where things I've said on her video has prompted her to disagree, and disagreement's fine. In fact, she and I ain't never going to agree on very much. And until today, I thought the one thing we could agree on was our mutual respect for each other. I think that's kind of evaporated, and you'll see why. I'm going to back up a little bit, okay? I'm going to back up to May the 10th, 2005. Then President George Bush was giving a speech in Freedom Square in Tbilisi, Georgia, in the former Soviet Union. A extremist named Vladimir Aratunian threw a live Soviet-made RG-5 hand grenade towards the podium where President Bush and where President Mikhail Saakashvili, I'm very, very not good at Russian names, but he was the Georgian president. The First Lady of Georgia was also there, as was First Lady Laura Bush, was nearby, and several other officials were seated very nearby. The grenade was live. The pin was pulled, but it did not explode because of a red tartan handkerchief that had been wrapped tightly around the grenade, presumably so that Vladimir Aratunian could sneak this into the speech. That was the only thing that kept the firing pin from deploying on this grenade. Aratunian was arrested in July of 2005 after an joint investigation between Soviets and our FBI. But while they attempted to arrest and apprehend Aratunian, he killed basically one of their police officers, an Interior Ministry agent, in the process. He was convicted in January of 2006 and given a life sentence. So this guy had every single intention of assassinating President Bush. It's been a little sketchy trying to figure out what his motives are. But basically, it came down to political rhetoric being what led to this guy's extremism, so much that he would attempt to kill a sitting president of the United States. That night, no, I'm sorry, I take that back. A day later, May 11th, 2005, on Countdown with Keith Olbermann, there was not a single mention of toning down rhetoric before it could cost a politician their lives. There was barely a mention of the assassination attempt, other than to speculate on how close the grenade was. Keith threw out there that it was 100 feet away, and it might not have even been thrown. And basically, he thinks, or his speculation was that the whole thing was probably made up. But instead of taking the opportunity to say, hey, we've been part of rhetoric that has now leading to violence against the President of the United States. Now, we've been graced with 5 more years of partisan rhetoric, almost 5 more years of partisan rhetoric from the formerly failed sportscaster turned Ron Burgundy in Keith Olbermann.
I don't know how to put this, but I'm kind of a big deal. People know me.
And ironically enough, that night, on May the 11th, 2005, we were graced. This is kind of an aside, but ironically enough, also on May 11th, 2005, we were graced with Keith Olbermann's objection to a memorial statue to Elizabeth Montgomery in her hometown of Salem, Massachusetts. Why? Because the Salem witch trials took place there in 1692. Elizabeth Montgomery was Samantha unbewitched. Yet Keithy is the same. I mean, he blurted out his objections to this, because of how intolerable and cruel it was that a statue of of Samantha be placed in somewhere near town square. Not even to be paid for by the taxpayer dollars, mind you. This was all to be financed by, I believe it was NBC. But this was the same hypocrite, failed sports, Ron Burgundy. Oh gosh, what did we call it? You can't even call him an anchorman because he's not even. I don't know, political hack that supported the mosque at Ground Zero. So this is Keith Olbermann. But Nellie commented to me on a. I'm sorry, she replied to a comment that I made because, long story short, Godless Hayes mentioned Keith Olbermann's response in his response to me, so I just hit it in the search bar on YouTube and watched the first video that came up. And this was Keith Olbermann's special response to the what happened to Gabrielle Giffords, Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords, and we get this 9-minute diatribe from Ron Burgundy on the need for it. I want to say it was close to 6 minutes of the Rushes, the Hannitys, the Becks, the Tea Parties, the Republicans, the this, the that, that need to stop. And if they don't stop, somebody should stop them. And if that person can't stop them, somebody should stop them. And we need to tone down the rhetoric. And 6.5 minutes in of a 9-minute speech, 2/3 of the way into this thing, he finally turns to himself and says, there was a time when apparently somebody took what I said out of context about Hillary Clinton, and it sounded like a call to violence, and it wasn't, and I apologize for it then, I apologize for it now. Never once, mentioning how people responsible should maybe yank his chain a little bit because of the violent and partisan rhetoric that he displays all the time. But, whatever. Keith Olbermann's a hack. He's a hack. And if anybody watches him and take him seriously, you automatically get put into the same crowd that watches Glenn Beck and takes him seriously. That's how ridiculous you are. You are that far on that side of the political spectrum. So, I'm sorry, but you are. You can deny it. You can say, but Keith is this, but Keith is that. But no, he's not. Okay, that's how disgusting of a person you are if you can't wait to get Keith Olbermann's thoughts on the shooting of Gabrielle Giffords. Now, as towards my feelings on the shooting itself, it's nothing less than tragic. Nothing less than a national tragedy. I mean, I mourned over the death of this beautiful 9-year-old girl, Christina Taylor Greene. I mean, those kind of things just tug at your heart, and it makes you pause to appreciate just a little bit more what you still have in your life. I have a 10-year-old son that is in the same grade as her and has the same future, or had the same future. You know, the sky is the limit when you're 10 years old or 9 years old, and all I can say about that is her father has acted with far more grace than I believe that I am capable of, especially when I know who the killer is. I know who the guy that pulled the trigger was, and I know where he is. I really don't want to get into it much more than that as far as that goes, but as the details have been unfolding about the 6 people that have been killed, and then Gabrielle Giffords, who has been fighting for her life ever since due to a gunshot wound to the head. This sheriff of this town has gotten in front of the camera time after time to talk about we need to tone down the violent rhetoric. And he couldn't. It was almost like he's been planning this for years, that he couldn't wait to blame the Tea Party. When it turns out this guy has zero affiliation with the Tea Party, zero affiliation with the Republican Party, zero affiliation with Christianity. Anybody that he has tried to place the blame on, he has zero connection with. So this tells me several things. First of all, that he's just a partisan hack in the mold of Keith Olbermann. And second of all, that he's a terrible sheriff. How many times have you seen murders on TV where the sheriff gets on there and starts blaming it on politics? Now, I realize that there was a congresswoman involved, but I don't remember anybody getting on TV the night that the hand grenade almost exploded near President Bush, saying that the violent partisanship has to stop, the violent rhetoric has to stop. Are you kidding me? The sheriff's job is to report some of the facts of the investigation to the media. That's it. Nobody needs his opinion. Okay? And second of all, every time he flaps his gums about this deranged guy, this kid with mental illness, anytime he throws anything partisan out there, he is just making a case for the defense attorney when you've elected him to be the guy that makes the case for the prosecutor. To say that this guy is not doing his job would be the understatement of the year. And I know the people of Arizona have it in them to do what's right, because you've elected some pretty good people in the past, and hopefully you won't re-elect this guy, because this case is going to be botched. This kid is never going to go to prison for this. He's going to get off, and it's going to be this idiot's fault. And to say he's an idiot is giving him too much credit. And to complete the circle of irony today, Olbermann opened his special statement with a, "We need to put down the guns. We need to put the guns down." And that's absolute bullshit. Excuse my French, but if a law-abiding citizen had been legally allowed to carry a gun in Arizona, as a matter of fact, I don't even know the Arizona gun laws, but I'm imagining that if a law-abiding citizen, had been nearby with their gun holstered on their waist, probably 6 people wouldn't have been shot. Probably 4 people wouldn't have been shot. Maybe 2, because the first one, a gunshot goes off, you're not sure it's a gunshot. The second one, you pretty much know. My guess is, by the third one, this kid's getting taken down, and taken down hard, by a law-abiding citizen carrying a concealed weapon. And what's really tragic is that it possibly could have saved this little 9-year-old girl her life. If anything at all, we need to responsibly pick up our guns and put them in their holsters and proudly proclaim that nobody is going to take them from us, especially not some deranged psychopath. And his talk about Obi's talk about toning down the rhetoric. Are you familiar? Maybe I'm going out on a limb here. Maybe this isn't as well known as I think it is, but I'm pretty sure that everybody knows that there's kind of a statement from the United States to the world that the United States government does not negotiate with terrorists. Right? We have that policy. It's been in effect since, from what I know, the 80s, maybe sooner. Do you understand? Do you know why this policy is in effect? It's because it saves lives. At the end of the day, it saves lives. If we negotiate with terrorist A, then terrorist B will work harder on his plot and probably demand more in return, thereby costing America either more money or more lives or whatever. Will the policy end terrorism? Well, considering that we've had some terrorist attacks since then, I think the answer is pretty obvious. But what it does do is it forces terrorists to change tactics. If we allow terrorists the comforting feeling of victory, then we encourage more terrorism, right? If we allow them to think that they won, then we encourage more people to go and try to win. That's just how life works. Much is the same with free speech. There's consequences to anything that you say. I could say the sky is blue, but if the deranged guy decides that the sky is green and that I absolutely have to see it his way, well then I could be suffering consequences from that. But this is not an intrinsic problem with free speech. No. The problem is that free speech is a very, I don't even know how to put it, a very devout and necessary right, God-given right. The problem is with mentally unstable people. And to do anything that kowtows to them because of some kind of pain we feel in our grief would be the same as negotiating with terrorists. Now, a little bit off topic, but I want to say that I applaud my congressman, Jim Renacci of Ohio, for going forward with his town hall meeting only 3 days after the shootings in Arizona. in true American style, he was not intimidated by the desperate acts of one deranged individual. Instead, he focused on his service to the thousands that recently elected him and how he can best represent them in Congress. So, Jim Renacci, I applaud you. Thank you for being a leader and a model congressman. And finally, probably the most important thing I'm going to say in this video, in response to Nelliediddle, is that she spent a few minutes, and I forgot, I'll link her video here. She spent a few minutes in sort of her own little diatribe about speculating that I am a conservative because of my parents, and that it was how I was raised that I became a conservative, and because I lack the ability to not think beyond what they indoctrinated me with. First of all, Nellie, you've never said anything to me more offensive in the history of our dialogues. Like I said at the beginning, I thought we had some kind of mutual respect here. I don't believe, and if I have, then I take full responsibility, but you've never called me out and said that I showed anything that you believe disrespect. Disagreement I have, but I have never shown you disrespect in any way, shape, or form that I'm aware of, and if I have, I'll apologize for it, but you never called me out on it at the time. And never, ever would I ever even fathom bringing your family into any argument that we had. If we disagree, that's between you and me. There's no need for garbage like that. That's childish. That's what kids do on the playground. My dad could beat up your dad, blah, 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 blah. That's crap, Nellie, and I'm pretty sure you're aware of it. And secondly, that's not an argument. That is not an argument against anything that I've said. It doesn't rebut anything that I've said. It doesn't go against it. It doesn't refute what I've said. It's just throwing stuff out like finished spaghetti and seeing what sticks. It's stupid. But more important, finally, I'm going to finish with this. I am the grandson of two former union presidents, one in the rubber industry and one in the steel industry. Okay? That should give you a little bit of a history, a background, okay? My family was very, very entrenched in the unions in the 60s, okay? My grandfathers fought wars that lesser people ran away from, okay? Wars for workers' rights, wars for fair wages, wars for equal pay. So don't give me no crap about what I've been indoctrinated with. And as for my mother, let me explain a little something to you about my mother, okay? Since I think so much like my mom. My mom called me up before Christmas and said, "Hey, Jay, what would you like me to get you for Christmas this year?" And I said, "Mom, you don't really have to get me anything, but if you're going to insist, the one thing I would like to read is George Bush's book called Decision Points." Okay? My mom's immediate response was, "Oh God, is there anything else?" I said, "No, Mom, I want to read that book, okay? I don't want you to spend a whole lot of money. Get me that book." So you know what I got for Christmas? I got Decision Points, and it came wrapped in a trash bag, not in wrapping paper, and she also included a little note in it telling me how hard it was for her to go to the bookstore and buy this book. She had to keep she couldn't look at the person selling her the book. She had to look down and explain to them that it was not for her. She was so embarrassed. Okay, so that should give you at least some insight into my mother. But I will tell you this personally. First of all, my mother is far more liberal than you are. And she's far more the feminist than you are, okay? So, leave my mom out of it. But fine, okay, I was raised by two parents, so you want to talk about my father. And how I can't possibly have come to conclusions on my own because I think too much like my parents, right? My father was drafted into Vietnam in 1968. I know very little about his service other than what I've read in other people's books, because my father is the subject of entire chapters of books. I invite you to look up a book called Hen Hunters, and if you'd like to know what chapter is about my father, when you get the book, call me and I'll tell you, okay? It's just a little bit of insight. I remember being about 10, 11 years old, and we're watching Rambo, one of the Rambo movies, right? It's on TV before I'm going to bed at night. I'm laying on the floor watching TV, and my dad's sitting on the couch behind me, right? They read off Rambo's statistics. Rambo, John Jay, blah, 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 Special Forces, Vietnam, blah, blah, kill, 82 confirmed kills, blah, 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 blah. And I hear my dad under his breath go, 82, huh? Well, that's almost a quarter of what I had. Now, you don't have to be quick at math to realize that 4 times 82 is a whole freaking buttload of people that he had to kill. People he'd never met, families that he destroyed, lives that he ruined, all because his government plucked him out of his life, and put him on an airplane, handed him a gun, and said, point at the guy with the sloped eyes, okay? So don't even tell me that I was indoctrinated into conservatism. All right. If anything, you know, I don't know that much about my father's politics. I haven't asked because it's not important to my relationship with my father. If anything, if I had to fathom a guess, I would guess my father would be considered a blue dog Democrat. He was a gun enthusiast. He owned guns. He shot guns. He killed animals for food. He kept guns around the house for protection because you never know who's going to break into your house. And if the other guy has a gun and you don't, you're at their mercy. And if that's how you want to live your life, at somebody else's mercy, that's all on you. I don't care what you do. This is what I'm going to do. And if I was in any way influenced in my views of the world and my political affiliations because of my father, then I would consider that a compliment to his expert parenting and tutelage in the face of mental derangement that he had from the atrocities that he was forced to commit over in Vietnam. I would assume, now maybe I'm a little bit wrong, but I would assume it's very much the reason he is still a avid drinker to this day, and I would also assume that it's the reason that he doesn't associate with his family very much anymore. But that's between me and my father. It has nothing to do with you. But if any way, shape, or form that I was influenced by my father in my political affiliations and my leanings and even my propensity for becoming a Christian, well, then that's a compliment and not the insult that you meant it to be. But here's the thing. See, I've never, ever brought up my family in any videos or any comments. I never brought up how I was raised. I talked about it in a blog TV one time because my little brother is an atheist. And my little brother and I grew up in the same exact household. We were 2 years apart. And my little brother was my best friend from the time I can remember. Even though we beat the crap out of each other on a regular basis, I still consider him one of my best friends in my entire life. And he is a devout atheist, wants nothing to do with religion. And he's very liberal. And we argue about this stuff very much, but we also keep an air of respect for each other. That I thought, like I said, that you and I have. But obviously, maybe I had something that you don't have. I suspect that your concerns over my views are just a projection of your own. You couldn't figure out a way to break free of the shackles and the chains that your parents placed on you to become some kind of liberal feminist. What it's got you doing is got your mind going one way and your heart going another. So you project your inadequacies of being able to break these chains onto others. There's guys out there that do this all the time. They'll say, "Oh, you just put the little R next to the guy you vote. You picked the guy with the R." Well, you know why? You know why you say that to me? Because you're a freaking retard and you go into the booth and pick a D. Until you have some kind of proof or evidence, leave crap like that at home. It's not an argument. It's not a rebuttal. It's nothing but pure conjecture and has no place in any kind of rational argument ever. I think I've had enough of this conversation tonight. I pretty much have lost all respect for Nelliediddle. I would expect, if she's the person I thought she was, I would expect her next video would be an apology. If it's not, then she's the kind of person that I think she is right now. And this is me being irrational, probably being more irrational than I need to be, but this is my irrational thought thinking that she's probably not a very good person deep inside, when I used to think differently. So the ball is in her court. Nellie, do with it whatever you want. You can take your ball and go home for all I care. But what happens next will explain a lot to me about the character, about your character. And because you've kind of taken up the spokesmanship, at least against me, for liberalism and very often feminism, it'll say a lot to me about liberals and feminists as well. So, like I said, I think I've had enough of this conversation for the night. I do pray that you all are blessed in your personal lives, that you don't have to overcome some of the stuff that I've had to overcome in my life. And it is my sincere hope to all of you out there that if you ever make a video about me, for any reason, be it a rebuttal to what I said in a comment section, be it a response video, be it even just a friendly hello or an unfriendly get bent, I would appreciate the common decency of a PM or a note on my wall. Just give me a chance to know that you're talking about me and not doing it slyly behind my back. If you're going to take the time to talk about me, at least give me the chance to respond. Thanks for watching. I really do. I mean, this is an interesting way to celebrate the fact that I hit 900 subs today. It doesn't sound like a lot. Nellie, I know she's got like uber millions, whatever, but you know, the Christians that get lots of subs usually have to be inflammatory somehow, and I don't think I'm inflammatory. I'm reactionary, but I'm not intentionally inflammatory very often. And if this video comes off as intentionally inflammatory, it's because it's reactionary to stuff I take some very bad offense to. But anyways, that's enough. I'm done with this. Ball is in your court, Nellie. For the rest of you, just keep in mind that true peace begins with how we treat our children. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for being part of my first 900 subs. And may God